kids, it's your good buddy Uncle Ben, and this here is the Kemper Profiling Amplifier, a piece of gear that I've had for a really long time, but actually haven't even touched in years. This is just the regular rack mount head. It doesn't have the power amp attached to it or anything like that. And I think a lot of you guys who have watched my channel for a while remember back in the day when that was all I was using. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I got the Fractal Audio Axe FX 3, and I put this thing in a rack case and haven't really touched it since. But unfortunately, due to absolutely no fault of the unit itself, my Axe FX was recently damaged and I've got to send it out for repair. So that means in the meantime, this guy is back in the fold again. So I thought it seemed like a fun idea for a video to take you guys through my first impressions and stuff coming back to the Kemper after having used the Fractal for so long. I like to go through some of my favorite patches and stuff that I used to use back in the day, try out some new ones, and just see how it stacks up compared to what I've been using for the last couple of years. After I get the Axe FX 3 repaired, I plan on doing a super in-depth like A-B comparison showing the strengths and weaknesses of both units for you guys. But today we're just going to focus on the Kemper itself. A lot of the ideas for this video were suggested by my lovely and loyal Patreon community over at patreon.com/Ben Eller Guitars. Or even just for $1 a month, you gain access to all kinds of backing tracks, downloadable tabs, bonus lessons, and so much more. Setup wise, I'm not going to do anything fancy at all. I'm just running 2 XLR outs from the back of the Kemper into my interface and running that into Logic Pro X. Okay, I've got my favorite guitar ever, my Sir Modern Satin, and I'm really excited to fire this thing up and see how these old profiles that I used to use all the time stack up. So now that it's booted up, it's brought up the last profile I was using, which is a Mesa Lone Star created by Michael Britt. Let's see what it do. Well, that sounds nice enough. There's one profile in here I'm really excited to revisit again. It was kind of like my default distorted rhythm or lead tone for years. It's one of a Marshall JCM 800. I think it's just called JCM 800 Drive or something like that. And it's part of a profile pack that I got from the Amp Factory years and years ago. I've used this thing on so many sessions and in so many videos that it's kind of ridiculous. Let's see how good it sounds. I'll be honest, that does not sound as good as I remember. It's really tubby in the low end. The low end is like really fat on this thing. It's like a little bit fuzzy sounding. It's not like super processed sounding, which is nice. But yeah, again, a little boomy, a little bit fuzzy. This might be one of those things where just my tastes have changed, my ears have changed. I gotta say though, it does respond to single coil like split sounds like that really well. Kind of cleans up some of that nasty bottom end I was talking about. A little bit of a letdown considering that was like my standard tone for so long, but let's keep browsing. So one of my absolute favorite super heavy tones that I ever found for the Kemper was made by Gregor over at Sinmix. He makes awesome profiles for the Kemper and the Axe FX and everything as well. And there's one that he made of all things, of a Bugera Tri-Rack, which is an amp that I've never even played in real life. But this profile always sounded wicked to me, so I'm looking forward to hearing how it holds up. Let's check it out. lot more scooped than I remembered. Like a whole lot more scooped and kind of fizzy sounding than I recall. But it does have that good like punchiness to it, you know? Yeah, again, a little bit spiky, a little bit harsher than the kind of tones that I favor these days, but it does sound really nice for that super tight, kind of thrashy stuff. Now hold your horses for one gall darn minute now, Uncle Ben from the past. Hey kids, it's Uncle Ben from the future. Well, it seems like Uncle Ben from the past ain't having no bit of fun with those Kemper Profiles, is he? But let me tell you, in about a day, he's gonna figure out exactly why. And guess what? It's his own dumbass fault. So don't you worry now, kids, he's gonna get his trouble sorted out. Just give him a minute. He was homeschooled. Bye now, see y'all in the future. But maybe I can account for the scoopiness by adding in a little bit of mid-range onto the profile. Let's just see how this does. That's like instantly way better and way more usable in a mix too. So metal. It's kind of nice that you can make those tweaks to profiles that need just a little bit of adjusting. More on that later. Let's revisit a profile made by a good buddy of mine, old Ryan Bruce. Some of you guys might know him as Fluff. This is a profile he made of a 5153 that I used to use a bunch back in the day for like heavy rhythm guitar parts. See how it stands up. So it's pretty good. It's definitely less scooped sounding than the other heavy profiles I was using earlier, but there's still a little bit too much gain on it for my taste and the way that I play. So let's roll the gain knob down and experience probably the worst thing about the Kemper. Check this out. You can hear that as I've rolled the gain down, it's completely changed the way the profile sounds. Like this is nothing at all like what it's like when you turn the gain down on a real amp. I don't know how this doesn't drive everybody insane that uses a Kemper. I mean, if you have a great sounding profile that's perfect as is, you're good to go and you'll get amazing tones out of it, but you better hope you don't need to change it at all, because that's where things get really fishy. Like that just sounds so thin and like weak and puny, like the amp is about to fall apart or something. Yeah, that drives me nuts. But I have noticed that the Kemper is better about adding stuff to profile. So if you have a profile that's great, except you want a little more gain or a little more bass or whatever, it usually does better with that. But reducing things on the Kemper equals the profile kind of falls apart, especially for high gain stuff. That sounds pretty good. This is a profile that my good buddy and big time record producer Mark Lewis made. It's not commercially available. You can't find this anywhere, and he would kill me if I ever shared this, so sorry about that one. Sounds pretty good. This is a profile he made of his legendary JCM 800 that's been used on like a million records. I think it sounds pretty good. So that's actually one of my favorite high gain tones that I've revisited here so far. This is a JCM 800 boosted with a think it's like one of those Fortin Meshuggah pedals, if I'm not mistaken. This is a profile made by another buddy of mine, Brody, from Rivers of Nile. You can find these profiles online. Look them up. I can't remember if it's through like SoundCrate or one of those, but I don't know. Look up, Rivers of Nile, Kemper Profiles. You'll probably find this one. It's got like a nice amount of top end to it. The mid-range and stuff is there. It's not overly boomy in the low end. This is one I'd definitely use. So I hooked up the Kemper here to my computer using a USB cord. That way I could use the Rig Manager software and fly around profiles and stuff faster like that. And then I realized that, oh yeah, of course my Kemper is like a million updates out of date. So I've got to load up the new update, actually 2 new updates so I can get it up to speed, onto this USB stick here that also houses all of my profiles and get this thing updated. Okay, so 2 updates and a hair tie later, and now here I am with my updated Kemper Profiler. Let's just see if it sounds any different with these updates and stuff. I don't exactly even know what all it did here, but this is that same Amp Factory JCM 800 profile I was saying I used all the time earlier. Let's just see what it sounds like. It might just be my imagination or the fact that like my ears are getting more accustomed to this again, but I think that just sounds overall a little bit realer. I don't know. It seems like the low end is like more thumpy and big without being super woofy. There might be a little bit more detail in that high end and even the delay or something. I don't know. I'd like to compare back and forth and see what changed right there. Maybe it's just all in my head. But the first thing that I did notice here is that the Rig Manager sure does look a lot different than it used to, because the last time I was using this, you didn't have control like over the amp settings and stuff on there. You could change between rigs, but you still had to tweak on the box itself. But it looks like this is all completely new and kind of cool. Well, hey there kids, I'm back for another day of tone tweaking, and this time I've got even more strings. This is my mahogany custom Ibanez RG7 string that I love so much. I want to play this thing a little bit, play around with some lower tunings and stuff today. Okay, so it's been a couple of days since I started making this video, and I've also spent a little bit more time with the Kemper, but I've just been so freaking busy, I've not had time to make more of this video. But I did have time to make a stunningly stupid realization on my own part as to why these profiles that I used to think sounded so good were now sounding like doo-doo. And honestly, I can't believe it actually took me several days to figure this out, but oh well, I was homeschooled, right? Okay, so if you go back to any of my old videos when I was using the Kemper full time, you'll notice that I had it in a rack box with a Matrix power amp sitting on top of my old Avatar speaker cabinet. That's how I used to run it all the time. I was running it through a power amp and cab, with a little bit of sound sometimes coming through my monitors. Up until now, I had never used my Kemper exclusively through the monitors. Now, the only time that I ever used the Kemper through my monitors, not with the cab and stuff like that, is when I was recording, doing sessions and stuff, right? And whenever I'm doing sessions with the Kemper, I always end up doing the usual thing that you do when you record, especially distorted heavy guitar tones, using an EQ and shaving some off of the low end and the high end. This is extremely common. I'm gonna say like 90-something% of the tones that we all like have had this done to them. The guitar lives in the mids. So me saying that I always go in and EQ my Kemper tones isn't any kind of like a knock on the fact that, oh, Kemper produces too much lows and highs. That's actually how it's supposed to be. That's how guitar tones are naturally. You can kind of look at those extra lows and highs as being like the fat on the side of a steak, right? Now you don't necessarily have to like eat that, and a lot of times they even carve it off if you're gonna be like serving the steak up and making it look pretty. But it was there the whole time, basting the steak and making it flavorful. That's what these extra lows and extra highs that we don't even really need are doing for your tone. It's weird because I really thought that I was losing my mind, because I remember really liking that tone that I had on like let's say for example the Stuff Gojira Does video. I loved that tone and how it came out in the mix. So I brought up the profile that he used to make that video, started playing through it, and I thought, man alive, this is awful. It's so shrill sounding. It's got all this boomy low end and everything. I thought it sounded terrible. So then I went in the actual Stuff Gojira Does session that I made And sure enough, all of the guitar tracks had some low pass and high pass going on them. So as soon as I put that EQ curve on a lot of my favorite profiles that I used to use, lo and behold, they sounded good again. Imagine that. So now that we got that sorted out, let's go back to chasing some tones here and trying out some new things that were offered in that update that I just did, as well as check out a couple of profiles made by some friends of mine, see how they sound. Here's the profile that I used in the Stuff Gojira Does video. This is actually a couple of little tweaks that I made on that Sinmix Bugera Tri-Rec profile I was talking about earlier. I went in and added some mids and I think messed with like the definition and stuff like that, just a few little tweaks. And now it sounds great. And you'll also notice too that whenever you get rid of those excessive highs and excessive lows, it doesn't sound scooped anymore. Everything sounded scooped to my ears earlier in the video, and that's just because I had these like mountains of highs and lows on either side, which made me perceive it as scooped. EQ is a weird thing, y'all. The new delay tones that they added in that update really do sound a lot better. That was always one of my complaints with the Kemper, is that those delays sounded kind of cheap, honestly. But these new ones that they've added on really do sound a whole lot better. And in addition to those new great sounding delays and reverbs, I also added a ton of new stomp boxes and stuff. And one thing that I'm finding really handy is like really frequently used pedals, like let's say for example the Ibanez Tube Screamer model that they have on here. In the rig manager, it automatically has a couple of default settings that you're probably going to end up using. For example, you can bring up the Tube Screamer at the 808 minimum setting, which is just kind of your popular metal boost with the drive all the way down and the tone and level kind of at noon, kind of like what you typically put in front of a 5150 or a rectifier or something like that. That way you can just pull up exactly what you want as a nice little preset and get back to work rather than having to spend time tweaking everything. So for example, if I was finding this Marshall that I'm using here just a little too loose for what I'm after, I could just bring up that 808 minimum preset and instantly tighten it up. Right there, distortion, Kemper drive, 808 minimum, and now I'm in business. Toy like a Toyga. So the reverbs on here are significantly better than what I had before. They've added in a bunch of really crazy, like washed out synthy verbs that I used to not have access to. And you know, these aren't really the kind of effects that you use all the time, but they sure do sound cool. This is the Cirrus reverb on its strings setting. But of course, one of the most fun things about the Kemper is trying out new profiles and stuff, and my buddy Mark Lewis was kind enough to send me his set of profiles that he made over with the folks at STL. Now you can buy these tones and stuff yourself and use them to your heart's desires, and I'm definitely excited to check them out. So let's poke through a couple of different of these and see what they sound like. This one is an EVH Stealth. Let's see what this sounds like. That's super tight, super nasty. It has that kind of like aggressive mid-range thing going on. Probably sit really well in a mix. That's really nice. That's kind of a lead profile of actually an amp that I have sitting right over here, a Paul Reed Smith Archon. It's got a liberal amount of reverb and delay on there. And again, a really nice focused mid-range in there to make it cut through the mix more better. Driftwood Purple Nightmare. I've always heard awesome things about these amps, but I've actually never gotten to use one before, but let's see what this profile sounds like. Oh yeah, that's like super, super thick sound. Here's another JCM 800 lead profile. Again, apparently that's just the amp I gravitate towards over and over and again. Yeah, I like that already. Let's also check out a couple of profiles that my buddy Wes Houck from the band Alluvial made. Now Wes has always got killer tones, so I'm gonna bet that these profiles bring the pain. So this is a Mesa Revision F rectifier, and I think it's boosted with one of those Fortin 33 pedals. That sounds pretty mean. That's a PRS Archon, I think also boosted with that 33. So there you go, guys, my first journey back into the world of Kempertown. There's some things that I really like about it. There's some things that I really don't like about it. But I am getting some tones and everything now that I'm really happy with. So I'm excited to use this in some session work as well as in my videos and everything while I wait for my Axe FX3 to be repaired. And after I get that unit back, I plan on doing like a really big, kind of head-to-head video showing you guys exactly what I like and dislike about both units. So if there's any stuff you'd like to see addressed in that video, be sure to let me know in the comment section below, and I'll tackle that stuff whenever I make that one. Also in the comment section, be sure to let me know what your favorite Kemper profiles are so I can check them out. Thanks for liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Be sure to ring the bell for notifications every time I upload a new slice of fried gold. And if you want to help support my channel and get a whole bunch of bonus stuff like downloadable tabs, backing tracks, bonus lessons, and so much more, consider supporting my channel over on my Patreon page, patreon.com/Ben Eller Guitars. Even just for $1 a month, you can get all kinds of goodies, so be sure to click the link in the video description and sign up for my Patreon page today. Thanks as always for watching. Now get away from the computer and go play some guitar. That's what I'm gonna do. Less clicking, more picking.